Good evening, I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're watching NewsX. Our big focus story this hour. President of India, Pranab Mukherjee, has advocated the need for strong electoral reform, saying it is time to look at legal provisions for increasing the number of parliamentary seats. President Mukherjee at a seminar on economic reform said that the situation in India is anomalous. India has over 800 million voters and 543 Lok Sabha constituencies, representing 1.3 billion people. He made a comparison to Great Britain, saying that if Britain can have more than 600 parliament constituencies, the India with much higher population should have much higher number of seats.
The major electoral reforms, which I do feel we should consider, the huge number of electors. In the last Lok Sabha elections, 800 million voters were there. They were to elect 543 members from territorial constituencies all over India. I am not talking right now about the 4,125 MLAs who are elected from their respective territorial constituencies by the same number of electors. The second issue which is coming, challenging the very modality of the type of election we have, first by post, that from 1952 to till date, no political party in India has won election, whatever be the number of strength in the house, by scoring 51% of the votes.
Vijayalakshmi is joining us with further details on this story. Vijayalakshmi, just take us to the fallout of the proposal that President Pranab Mukherjee has made, greatly advocating that there needs to be now widespread discussions on parliamentary reforms.
That's right, and Uday, it's not for the first time that President of India has spoken on this subject. Earlier also, he in fact has spoken that how simultaneous elections for the legislative assemblies and Lok Sabha is the need of the hour. And yesterday, while speaking on a program, on a seminar on electoral reforms, President of India has again reiterated that how electoral reforms are need of the hour. Yesterday, he spoke about that how we as a nation really need to look at, look at the ways by which we can increase the numbers of seats in our lower house of the parliament. He said that we should, we perhaps need to look at the legal provision which are available to us to increase the number of seats in our Lok Sabha. Well, remember, Uday, as far as Lok Sabha is concerned, the number of seats, the 1971 census was the basis through which we have, reached to that particular number. In fact, there had been certain amendments that has been made to the constitution, even, to get that number there. There is a freeze on that number, decided by our constitution for the number of seats in the lower house of the parliament are concerned. So, well, President of India yesterday had said that now the time has come that we should start re-looking at it. We should now perhaps think about the legal provisions which are available to us, through which we can increase the number of the seats in our lower house of the parliament. As far as the political class of our country is concerned, people have at large welcomed it. The ruling dispensation is saying that there needs to be a debate and discussion on this particular issue. The opposition is saying that the onus lies on the government of India, what they are going to do on this particular issue. So, well, let's see what government of India actually is going to do. It's not only about increasing the number, it's also about the logistical aspect. You really need to have a new building if you really want to increase the numbers of the parliament. It's also about the logistical aspect. You really need to have a new building if you really want to increase the numbers of the parliamentarians in your lower house. Well, these are, various things that one needs to keep in mind before actually increasing the number of the, parliamentarians or number of the seat in the Lok Sabha.
Just stay with us, Vijayalakshmi, because we're also opening it out. Vikas Singh, senior lawyer and former ASG, is joining us live from Delhi at this point. Welcome, Mr. Singh, to the program. We're also opening it out for our viewers to call in and air their thoughts on this big story. It will affect all of you, our viewers. So it is important that you air your opinion on this story. We're putting out our numbers there on your screens. You can call us and share your thoughts. Whatever be your opinion, we'll be taking your calls live this evening. I want to quickly go across to Kalpana from Mumbai, our first viewer joining us. Kalpana, go ahead.
Good evening, Uday. You know, all this sounds very nice on paper. Okay. If you say electoral reforms, so me as a voter, you as a voter, can we recall our MPs? Shouldn't that also be made mandatory?
Okay, so right to recall.
You know,
Yeah.
yes, I mean, if you want more MPs, let these MPs do their jobs. No, how many MPs do their jobs? You really tell me, do you know who your MP is? Do I see my MP in 5 years' time in my area?
Okay.
You only come and look for votes. I mean, let the MPs get onto the ground and do their jobs first and foremost before getting more MPs onto the government.
Valid point,
Seriously.
valid point Kalpana is making this evening. She's saying it's time to increase the productivity of the existing MPs first before adding more number of MPs. And she also says maybe provisions like right to recall also need to be looked at in the first place. So Vikas Singh, before we take this discussion forward, your opening thoughts on the suggestion of the President of India.
Well, I also agree with the viewers that you just had on your show that having more number of MPs probably should be the last thing that the country should consider at this point of time. I mean, the more important thing is if you were to go by in terms of ranking, number one is criminalization of politics. There is a report of the Raw Commission which is pending with the government. The government doesn't even have a bill on that, where it says that you should bar people who are charge sheeted of serious crimes from even contesting the elections. Now that is most important.
All right, I'm afraid we seem to have lost Vikas Singh there. We'll just try and reconnect with him, but we're getting more reactions now coming in on this story.
There is an argument that if the population has increased in few states, it will only benefit those states and not the others where the population hasn't increased. I think it needs to be debated in Parliament and a consensus needs to come up. When we talk of electoral reforms, even our Prime Minister's viewpoint when it comes to funding of elections has been something which has been very well accepted by one and all. And I hope that when it comes to this population vis-a-vis representation in Parliament, even that is well taken care of through a popular debate.
Now by more viewers who are calling in on NewsX. Matthew is joining us from Bengaluru. Matthew, go ahead. Matthew, can you hear me? Okay, we seem to have lost that connection with Matthew from Bengaluru, but we also have Hari Kaur joining us from Delhi. Hari, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. The discussion is very interesting, and the President has been calling for the improvements in the electoral reforms there. And now they are saying that they should switch over increasing seats. That's okay. But I would like to tell them that there should be qualifications, like we have qualifications in any other job. Anywhere, if we go, we have qualification, it should be there. So there should be a fixed qualification. At least an MP who goes to the Parliament, he should be able to speak, he should have knowledge. He should have the efficiency to represent the people of India. So that's very important. And it is not just increasing the seats and it will be an additional burden on the exchequer of the taxpayer. But there should be some basic qualifications also. Like we go in some good private company, we join, they ask us everything. From which background you have come. Then they ask us questions. What are our views? How much is our IQ? That should be the basic qualification for these MPs, not those who come and beat the people on the aircrafts and other things and go in for Gundaism and all that. That should
No, that's a valid point. That's a valid point you're making, Mr. Cole. Thank you very much for calling in with your perspective there from Delhi. We also have our viewer, Matthew. Matthew's back with us on the phone line from Bengaluru. Go ahead, Matthew.
A very good evening there. See, there are two things I want to mention. The first thing is it's a good sign to increase the number of MPs. But at the same time, there are no saints or no more saints in the political industry in India. So there are no more saints in politics. Therefore, even in the existing 543 that you see, you have people like the Gaikwad, goons like that. Then you have people who are really fanatics, Then you have people who just use any abusive language against women, and it goes on and on. So if you just increase the number, you're only adding fuel to fire. Rather, it would be fine if the existing number of MPs itself, you have clean people out there who are dedicated to the people of the nation. And further up, if you increase such good people, it's a welcome sign.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew, for joining us there with your thoughts from Bengaluru. Brijesh Kalappa, spokesperson of the Congress Party, joining us on NewsX as well. Brijesh Kalappa, how really do you react to this proposal, this discussion that the President, Pranab Mukherjee, has kick-started?
In a representative democracy, it's essential to have, people who represent you in Parliament, and that representative character can be upheld only if there are far more representatives in the democratic process. For instance, today, a member of Parliament represents between 12 lakh and in some states 14 lakh people, and this is far too high. So if one has to have a truly representative character, that number must certainly come down. And I think, according to me, about 4 to 5 lakh is appropriate.
Yeah, but, Brijesh Kalappa, that's a valid point you're making, of course, but there are those viewers also calling in who say that with the current productivity being extremely shoddy and leaving a lot to be desired of some of the MPs, is it a wise idea to increase their number? That's a thought also emerging. I'll take your reaction on that, but I'm being told Rishabh Gulati, executive editor, also joining us at this point with further perspective and details on this big debate, on this big story. So Rishabh, over to you.
Now, here's some interesting tabulation which will help you understand exactly what the debate underneath all of this is. Have a look at this. When we talk about amount of population versus seats, and we take 2 states from the north and 2 states from the south. So Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, the 2 populous states in the north, and Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Now, currently UP has 80 seats and Bihar has 40 seats. They have 16.7% of the population, and Bihar has about 8.6% of the population. Tamil Nadu, 39 seats, 28 seats, has a population of 6% as compared to India's total, and Karnataka has about 5.1% of India's total population. Now, when it comes to UP, that has about 14% of the seats when it comes to the members of parliament. Now, if you keep the number of seats static at 543, which means you don't change the number of seats, but you balance out the ratios between the north and the south, what ends up happening is that UP, with its very large population, would qualify for 10 more seats from the 80 that it already has. Bihar would qualify for 7 more seats, and the losers would be Tamil Nadu and Kerala, and Karnataka and Kerala, which will actually lose seats and lose representation at the center. Now, to ensure that Tamil Nadu and Karnataka and Kerala, the southern states, because they have checked their population numbers, don't lose representation, a study that has been done by Oxford University says a minimum of 647 seats will have to be increased, or the 543 will have to be increased by 104 to 647. What this will do is give UP 23 additional seats and take it up to 103. It will give Bihar 40 plus 11, take it up to 51, and the change will be Tamil Nadu will see a net nothing, and Karnataka will see a net nothing. Their proportions will fall from 7.2 to 6.2%, 5.2 to 4.3%, but the seats will not fall. And this population divide, in terms of a simple arithmetic of amount of population per constituency, is where the debate and the complication of doing all this inherently lies.
That's a valid point that you've raised there, and of course you've taken us through those details and statistics as well. Thanks very much, Rishabh, for joining us there. Vikas Singh, back on the statistics as well. Thanks very much, Rishabh, for joining us there. Vikas Singh, back on the broadcast with us. Yes, Vikas Singh, you were making the point before we lost you about the current MP's productivity and whether increasing the numbers will increase productivity and increase representation or not. Yes, Mr. Singh, back to you.
Well, first of all, increasing the number should be last on the priority as far as the electoral reforms are concerned. The most important is the criminalization of politics. There is a report by the Law Commission which has recommended that people who are accused of serious crimes should be debarred from contesting elections. Now, alongside, as somebody very rightly pointed out, there should also be some qualification. After all, even for a clerk, there has to be a qualification. For a member of parliament, there is none, which is also not desirable for this country. Second is the way money power is used in election. What happened in Tamil Nadu yesterday is shocking. I mean, according to me, the election commission should use its plenary power and debar that particular candidate who was contesting with that kind of money. So unless you do something very drastic in situations like this, nothing is going to change in the near future. Third is the corrupt practices which are committed by the politicians and which go to court. Unfortunately, those decisions take almost the 5 years, and these people continue in office, and really nothing happens, even in serious allegations. So there also I feel that there should be some time-bound determination, and the law should provide that no higher court should grant any stay, so that the judgment should come in a very, very swift time-bound manner, say maximum 6 months' time, so that if there is a person who has committed any corrupt practice, he should be immediately debarred, for not only for this election but for the next 6 years, which is what the law requires.
Interesting. So you're saying, yes, reforms of course are needed, but rather than increasing the number and increasing the proportion of MPs, it's important to have a cleansing of the system as it currently is, and that's why decriminalization of politics
the
is...
quality of MPs need to improve.
Yeah, quality of MPs needs to increase, and of course decriminalization is the way to ensure that. Mr. Singh, please do stay with us, because we're being joined now by more viewers who are also calling in on the show. Rokur Vasanti Rao joining us from Bengaluru. Go ahead.
Hello. You see, we took a lot of interest in electoral reforms post-emergency, when the people like Advani and others were in Bangalore. There were a lot of debates, and I have been very passionate about electoral reforms, because I had contested the election in 88 Assembly, and I had an opportunity to observe it from as an insider and as an outsider. It desperately needs reform. It is not number that matters, but we have to restructure how you go about it. It's not the number that matters.
Okay, not the numbers that matter, but the procedure really, which needs to be priority. Actually. Thank you. Rukur Vasanti Rao joining us there from Bengaluru. Our next viewer also joining us from Bengaluru, Chandar is calling in. Go ahead, Chandar.
Yeah, hi, good evening. So basically, some of the views have already been expressed by earlier viewers. The key thing is the average man or woman in India is helpless against the powers that the MPs currently have. There's no scrutiny against them. They can do whatever they want, and an average Indian cannot question it. For example, the recent Gaikwad incident. That's a clear example. So basically, it has to be quality versus quantity. Thank you.
Not quantity. That's the priority area. Thank you, Chandar, for calling in there from Bengaluru. Quick closing thought then from Mr. Vikas Singh. I want to come back to you. Vikas Singh, as you said, of course, the reforms needed should be on cleansing the system and not possibly increasing the number of MPs. But if increasing the number of MPs is looked at, Mr. Vikas Singh, do you feel population shouldn't be the only criterion? Why should UP, some say, have 80 MPs, whereas Kerala has a far lower amount? Just because the Kerala population has been kept in check and has not grown by leaps and bounds, should they suffer by having less representation in parliament? Should there be this disproportion?
I agree that this number which has been frozen at the 1971 census, that should continue for some time, because rather it should continue for forever, because if you see, if the states were to have, the southern states were to have a lesser say in the national politics, that may ultimately alienate them from the national mainstream, and a time will come where at some stage the states may, feel that we are a neglected blot in the nation, and there could be a breakaway attempt, which will be, very damning for the country. And one more thing which really comes to my mind is the people like Gaikwad. There should be powers with the speaker to immediately, because these MPs are ultimately supposed to be role models for society. They are representing the society. They are to frame the laws for this country. They are actually the ones who people should look up to for, the exemplary behavior. So people like Gaikwad should be immediately suspended and after a short inquiry expelled from the parliament. Because that will go a long way in ensuring that even after election, MPs, don't misbehave.
Point taken.
So that message should go very loud and clear. That just because you've been elected doesn't mean that you have a right to, misbehave and get away with it. So, and this numbers I don't think should change. This will be not in the larger national interest to give up. Even if you, supposing, freeze the southern numbers at the present and increase the numbers for UP and Bihar, overall their percentage in the national politics will shrink. And accordingly, their say in national affairs will also get
no, that's a valid concern. That's a valid point that you're raising there. But we'd have to leave it at that. Unfortunately, we're out of time. But Mr. Vikas Singh, appreciate you joining us on the program with your perspective. Thanks to our viewers also who called in over the last segment, and also thanks to Vijay.